important factors to consider when orchestrating. Volume of the melody first. Volume of the melody in relationship to the accompaniment. Seems basic, right? Your melody has to be heard, so don't give the melody to the bassoons, but the brass playing a loud accompaniment. So you always have to make sure your melody, or whatever the major idea is, has to be heard. And this pertains live or in mock-ups. You know, I will make some comments on the side regarding mock-ups, but a lot of these points really are even more important than mock-ups. Why do I say that? Because mock-ups already sound like a machine, right? Because they are a machine. So already you got a mark against you. If somebody gives me a mock-up of an orchestra, right? And somebody gives me a real orchestra playing their piece, who do you think I'm going to probably want to hire? You know, I mean, yes, the mock-up is beautifully done, but everyone likes the live orchestra sound. Everybody likes real people. Michael Giacchino, somebody asked him in one of my classes, you know, what do you want to hear on a reel? What would you like to hear? He said he and the directors he knows would rather hear somebody give them, you know, a duet for tambourine and vibraphone, you know, than, you know, Giga Studio or Vienna Strings mock-up of, you know, a John Williams sound. Because the director's going to think, wow, if he can write something interesting for those two instruments, imagine what he can do when he has 30 people or 40 people. Because you're showing them you know how to write for real players. So some of these examples and some of these points will really come into effect. So always make sure your melody, I always like to have the melody one dynamic higher. Now, there's always some, depending on the balance issues, but if you go in that direction, always have the melody one level higher. You can work from that. You can always balance it later on. Always start with, I think it's a good idea to start with that. The general texture. Are many instruments playing or only one? That's going to be a, you know, a common basic question. The character of the passage. This is going to be very important how you're orchestrating. Is the mood, is it very light or very heavy and serious? Obviously, that's going to depend on how you're going to orchestrate a passage. Right? That's, you know, if it's heavy, you're going to have a lot of forces, maybe a whole violin section playing it. If it's very light and playful, maybe the melody is only played by a clarinet or played by a solo flute. So that's another basic. The tempo. Obviously, the tempo is going to affect what instrument can effectively play a passage. Flutes, violins, clarinets, piano are very agile, obviously, and the bigger instruments are less so. So if you have a melody, and you've got to think to yourself, well, who's going to play this melody? And who's going to sound good playing this melody? And the use of featured instruments. Are there solo instruments that you want to highlight in this piece? Like one of the examples, Prelude After the Fawn. The flute is almost always playing that melody. And we get our ear associated with that. And it's done purposely. Debussy does that. So that's an important orchestration concept, right? He's not always switching it for color. Sometimes it's a good idea to have your melody always be switching, but he doesn't want to switch it. He wants our ear to associate the melody with the clarinet, with the flute. So if you have a piece that has that, then you've got to consider that.